you.
Oh, Foxy, it's your birthday. Not for real, real, just for play, play. This is Cree Summer, and Moana Nui will be right back.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Moana Nui podcast. We have a very special episode happening tonight, discussing holding spaces. Am I Hawaiian enough? And with this, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our very special co host, Kuma Michelle Manu. And she's going to go ahead and kick everything off for tonight's show. So, Kuma Michelle, I hand it over to you.
Mahalo, Dana. Aloha kako. Today we're discussing a question that many Kanaka Maoli whisper about, get attacked online about, get confronted about when we are on our aina, or carry quietly in our pu'uvai or na'au. And the question is tonight is, am I Hawaiian enough? And there is like a difference tonight when we're discussing this Hawaiian versus Kanaka Maoli and the safe space and the counseling that is happening. There's a difference between Kanaka Maoli and Hawaiian because Hawaiian is modern. Kanaka Maoli, speaks to our sacred or kapu, indigenous beliefs, our mo'oku auhau. And Hawaiian speaks to Hawaii nei, what we are and who we are and what we do today. So Hawaiian culture today holds everything, ancestral beliefs and Christianity, kalo and plate lunch, Kanaka Maoli sovereignty alongside U.S. governance and military presence, maluhia inside occupation, and the daily reality of non-indigenous systems forced onto our aina. So today I just want to open up and welcome the Kanaka Mano Wahine we have here, our prominent, beautiful panelists that are really spreading our culture and really living and really embodying our ancient ways in our modern world. And so I would love to turn it over to Ipo now to go ahead and introduce your team and what you're doing and where you're doing it and how this came about. Ipo.
Aloha kumu. Mahalo so much for that intro, for your time, for what you do, and for having us on today. We are all super grateful to be here and to have the space to be able to talk more about the topic of being Hawaiian enough and kind of, like you said, the counseling or the support group style work that we're doing around that. I think what I'll do is I can give just like a really quick intro into who I am. And then I think the intros for the others come best from them themselves. They have such a rich background that will help to provide more context for the work that we've been doing. So, aloha kako, I am Ipo. I am Kanaka Maoli, born on Oahu. My family is from both Kauai and Hilo from Hawaii Island, but I was raised in Southern California. I've moved around a bunch. I was really privileged to be able to grow up in the Halo and to dance hula and be in a Pacific Islander community. However, this is kind of like the spiel I always give. Even though I had that privilege, which was a privilege, I also struggled a lot with my identity and racial imposter syndrome. And it wasn't until I started moving around the continent and meeting other Hawaiians who were generationally of the Hawaiian diaspora, so those who were raised exclusively away from Hawaii, did it start to click that there was something more that we could do to be able to connect each other to one another and to Hawaii itself. Eventually, that informed Hawaiian Diaspora, which is a grassroots organization, and that's what we're dedicated to is supporting the Hawaiian diaspora in both large and small ways. And so, really, that's just like the short story of me, Ipo. But I would really like you to hear more from the organizers on this call and more about their background. And so I think I'll actually just pass it over to Kunae, who is also part of Hawaiian Diaspora. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear more from them.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Kunae. I am Hawaiian, originally born and raised in Pennsylvania. I'm also an adoptee, which has also really I think like magnified a lot of the themes present in diaspora discussions more, right? Like what Ipo touched on, identity questions, cultural questions. I got reconnected to Hawaii during TikTok, or well, during COVID on TikTok. Not having anything to do since I was a hairstylist and you can't exactly do that from home. I found Hawaii TikTok and I found people who were so generous in answering a lot of questions. And now I am living in Honolulu, living on Oahu for 3.5 years now. And I've graduated from UH Manoa with a degree in Hawaiian Studies. So it's been a crazy road to get here, but I'm so happy that I've met Ipo and got to contribute to Hawaiian Diaspora. And I didn't say I am the community liaison or Lahui liaison for Hawaiian Diaspora, especially as a member of the group that lives in Hawaii. So, mahalo.
Mahalo kunae. And I would next like to invite Kamakanoe to introduce a little bit more about herself and the work that she does.
Aloha kako. So good to be with you all. My name is Kamakanoe Ornellas. I recently started going by my Hawaiian name that was given to me through the many generations of the women in my family, because that's really who I am. And I was born and raised in New York, actually. My dad immigrated to the East Coast from Hawaiian homestead land on Molokai, and he came for school and then didn't leave for the next 50 years. So I grew up on the East Coast and to a Midwest English, Irish, Scottish mom. And so being mixed has just been a big part of my life and my journey, and always feeling like I was disconnected from my heritage, primarily my a Hawaiian heritage. Even though I was able to go back to visit often with my family and to see my family, I'm a fairly like white assuming Kanaka, and often felt like I was an outsider. Even though nobody made me feel that way, I just never quite felt like I belonged. So it's been a huge journey of mine being able to recognize and work with my own feelings of like, am I Hawaiian enough? That was a whole journey. And that journey actually brought me to counseling. And so I've been a therapist for the last 15 years, and I primarily support mixed and BIPOC folks who are really wanting to work with intergenerational and historical trauma that often lives in our body. And through both that counseling work and then my own healing work, it's just been such a joy and a passion to support other BIPOC in this work. And then in the last, 3 to 5 years, really working with other Kanaka Maoli to work with their own shame as well, so that we can all reclaim our culture and our heritage. And my hope is to actually really join the fight for sovereignty for our lands and for our people. So that's what really brings me to this work and why I'm so passionate about it, and really passionate about like liberation work in general. So how do we, as oppressed, peoples and descending from oppressed peoples, reclaim our lands and our sovereignty together? So thank you so much, and kick it over to Anela as well, who I'm so happy to work with.
Mahalo, Tita. Aloha mai kako. It's so lovely to be with you all. My name is Anela. I'm of the Ohana Barboza, and I live on Mokuo Keawe today. And I was raised in Northern California. So my parents are actually from the Vietnam time. My dad went away to join the Air Force. My mom went away and went to school in Hayward. They met, and so I was born and raised away. A couple of my cousins are also like from the diaspora, but by and large, the rest of my family was still at home. So when I was growing up, I was one of those kids who was assimilated into white culture and then got to spend my summers at home with my grandparents. And got exposed to all the things home in this really like bifurcated kind of dual reality type of way, where when I would come home, if I just never said anything, then no one would ever know. And if I came home, if I came back to the continent, if I said the right things, then maybe nobody might know. Yeah, or at least if they were talking to me on the phone, they wouldn't know. So I kind of spent the whole my whole life thinking that I was one of those people who was just all by myself out of my own little moku, just trying to blend in with the rest of whoever was rolling around in the land and the dirt where I was. And it's really only been after my kids got to college age, they both decided they were going to come home. And so they both left the United States and came over to come to school on Oahu. And that made everything possible for me to really explore again in my Hawaiian Enough now to come home. So I made the trip in 2022, and I've been here now living in what's my family home. My mom came home about 20 years ago, so I moved home and now live here. And I would say that this like exploration of, am I Hawaiian enough? It's like something that had to brew quietly inside my na'au all my life. You know, I was like a year ago old when I met all of these beautiful like other Kanaka Maoli who are now my sisters in my ohana. I realized, 5 years ago on the Moana that I wasn't alone. There were other people out there who were all over, where I was living in Minneapolis and, all over the world, feeling like, how do we connect? How do we stay tied in with where we come from? And that really brought me into the work that I do as a somatic practitioner. It's all about like finding what's true inside the body, and like living who we are from the inside out and being really honest about that. And so like once I had done that work and figured out how to just like stand in my own skin and be brave enough to come home, it just made sense for me to keep doing that work and deepening that work. And so that's what I get to do now with people, largely like a lot of what Kamakanoe said, like BIPOC folks who are living in diaspora, folks who are living in forced dispossession of land. Those get to be the people that I spend all my time with now. And it's really a blessing, and like a blessing and a gift to be with all of you. Mahalo.
So Ipo, would you like to go ahead and ask your first questions about what it was like to be contacted by you or each other, on how you felt about holding space, what that meant? Were there any hesitations or boundaries or conditions that any of you felt needed to be there before you agreed to do this and step into your kuleana?
Mahalo, Kumu. Yeah, yes. I would really love for everyone to hear more from Kamakanoe, Anela, and Kunai about what came up for them. I will say, when it turns out we were all at the same time thinking the same thing. So we all met at at different times, but it turns out that like through the similar conversations we were having, this question kept coming up that was like, is there a support group for this kind of thing? Like, should there be? What does that look like? And so, us as Hawaiian diaspora organizers itself, we had thought, especially me and Kunai and another, because Kunai is one of our founding members, and we have another founding member as well. In the very beginning, we knew that yes, there should be some sort of space, but immediately we realized like, well, we are not the ones who have like the experience background to be able to hold that kind of space for other people. Yes, we can have dialogue and relate to others. But if we're going to bring people together in such a vulnerable space, we need to make sure that we bring in the right people and are facilitating appropriately, because these are um, we're talking about identity, which is like such a sensitive and vulnerable piece of a person. So it turns out that around the same time that I came into contact with Anela and Kamakanoe, who had already known each other, which I didn't realize yet, they were kind of like, it was like hub and spoke, very similar sort of questions that were coming up. And once we all realized that we did know each other, had a connection to each other, then I think it started with a group chat that was like, what should we do? And so then we had reached out to Kamakanoe and Anela and got like, as well as some folks from their spaces like Ulele coaching and some of our volunteers at Hawaiian Diaspora. We got on a Zoom and we were like, what is this? How should we do this? So I am really interested to hear more from Kamakanoe and Anela as the co-facilitators. What kind of came through your minds when we approached you about this? Because this is, both a simple and a heavy question. Like, how can we form a support group, but what should we know going into a space like this, and how can you help us grow it?
I'm happy to flow in first about this. Yeah, I started dreaming about it first. It came to me in dreams, and it came also through conversations that Anela and I had, both as people who had to work through a lot of our feelings about our Hawaiianness on our own, basically, not having a lot of spaces where we had others that we could really be within that, who could get it. And really acknowledging like that call kept happening, that call kept happening to have a space where others could get it. Because I mean, for me, my most of my ohana still lives in the islands, yeah, and then my dad actually moved back, which is amazing. But to have the experience of being generational is a unique experience in some ways, and all that comes with it. And so I sat with it for over a year, and then Anela and I were talking about it too, and she was saying a lot of the same things, and like, how do we do this? How do we do this? Was some of what we had talked about, and that I connected to, that I wanted there to be a community, a way for us to be in this together. That's what our people would have done. That's what I wanted us to be able to offer, is how to be in this together. And that as those who would be facilitating the group too, that the people in the group knew that we could get it, that we got it, that we've been there, that we're doing this work, that we've been experiencing this too. That felt important, that there's not like this hierarchical kind of structure of like, we're the experts, that it's like we're holding the space, but that we're in this with them. So that felt important. Anela, anything you wanna add?
Yeah. Mahalo for that. Everything Kamakanoe just said, I feel really resonant with. And then I think what I can say is, for me, what I'm starting to understand about the way that these like diaspora shapes start to happen is that no matter how much like I'm a part of things, there's still a part of me that thinks, I don't know if I belong here. I'm not sure if I'm Hawaiian enough, or I'm the right kind of Hawaiian, or the right kind of contribution to the space. So for me, it was real simple. I was like a yes. I was a yes from the jump. And then there was this little part of me that was like, oh, but do I still fit? Do I fit because now I live at home? Do I fit because I never learned how to have this conversation skillfully? Do I fit because I'm not, whatever? I had this whole list of things that I was like checking off and looking at people's faces to say, like, can I really be part of this community? And so I think what I was like what I needed to work through for myself is, can I really be like held and like loved and accepted as one of our community of diaspora and not do harm, like, and not have impact on the people who haven't yet come home, or maybe I'm in a different place in my journey, and so how I show up then affects other people and how they see themselves. And so those were the kinds of questions that I was in and I was asking, and really like leaning into the friendship and familial ties that I now feel with these folks who are here on the call.
Thank you both, all three of you, for sharing. I guess we'll start with Kunae on the second question, which is, how do we distinguish between necessary protection of sacred Kanaka Maoli culture and harmful gatekeeping that fractures our own people, especially those disconnected by history, adoption, or survival? And perfect. You know, you discussed about being adopted and finding your way, and now being on the Aina. I think this is it's perfect for you to start in answering this. So how do you feel that we distinguish between sacred culture and harmful gatekeeping? Because I can tell you before you answer, I've experienced this in a sacred tradition in which I am a kumu in. Because we're Hawaiian or Kanaka, does it mean that we should have access to all sacred traditions at any time? Or are some of us not mature enough, which is in every culture, right? In every peoples, where there is this exploitation, this big word, prostitution, this monetization of things that were once held very sacred. So what do you think, Kunae?
Man, that's a big question. I think first of all, like, I'm super familiar with the experiences that you're alluding to, Kumu. I was actually in a talk story that you did like via Zoom a couple years ago. But yeah, so it's this idea of, I think, like modernity and us being a solely online community. I think we see this in pretty much every event that we plan, because a lot of them are online, because we are a digital grassroots organization. I think the beautiful thing about these platforms is that, right across dispersion, across adoption and displacement, we're still able to build these communities. But then there are very real concerns, right? It's like, well, how do I know who's in the Zoom room, right? How do we vouch for this? How do we do this? How do we, right, make sure that we can keep these spaces safe spaces? And that's something that we pour over for every event that we consider taking online. It's a lot of discussion. I know from the time that we started talking about this Am I Hawaiian Enough session to the time it launched, I think it was like pretty much a solid year, right? Yeah. Like from the initial ideation to like the actual event, it was a year. And I think even the weeks leading up to it, we were like, are we sure we're ready for this? Like, I think we should pour over it one more time. So it was just really wanting to make sure that we were super intentional and set super specific boundaries about like what is allowed in these spaces and what's not tolerable in these spaces. Right. And like wanting to make it feel welcome for everybody. And I think it's, yeah, with modernity and technology, it's this ongoing conversation on like should everything be kept sacred, and how do we discern that from gatekeeping? And that's why we've started doing more research and like building more alliances with people in like data sovereignty technology, and trying to really figure out like how to exist in these digital spaces and make sure that like we're the ones controlling where the mana is, controlling who has access to it, and in a way that is like proper, like couple boundaries and not necessarily like gatekeeping just because it's online, or like another big thing is cost, right? So like even trying to like keep things like free access or like super affordable access. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Kuna. Mahalo. So I'd love to. Yeah, that was beautiful. It's such a fine line. You know, it really is. So Anela, would you like to go ahead and maybe give us your opinion on this? Harmful gatekeeping that fractures our own people versus sharing sacred traditions.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so I grew up in the 90s. Yeah, the 80s and the 90s, and it was before internet came along. And so I remember my grandma used to like clip out newspaper clippings and send them to me in the mail. She'd wrap my Christmas presents in newspapers so that I could see what was going on in Hawaii. And that was like the way that we had access. And my grandpa would, for like 20 something years, until he got too old and wasn't going to upgrade technology, he would record the Merry Monarch for me, and then send it to me in these care packages. And that was really access. That was how I learned culture. And a lot of it was because there was like a couple ways that you had access. It was like either the way that was here in Hawaii, or there was the way that it was being translated and like commoditized and sold somewhere else. And so I had this relationship with like being, I would say, like a purist. Like if you ask me to make fried rice on a Saturday, it's always going to be the way my grandma makes it, just period. That's it. Right. And so this question like really gets to the heart of something for me. It's like, who gets to learn? Who gets to learn and have access to our like ike and our practices? And sometimes it's like it's location based and you have to be here. But then also it's like the integrity of the information is held inside of the relationship with the kumu, the relationship with the halal, and how does that get shared in the right way? And so I guess like how I think about it is, because I don't know the answer, I'm like wrestling around with things like, how do people get compensated for their energy and their investment of time and their investments of students so that they can be fed and taken care of and their health can be well? And then how do students get chosen when there's people who have access to live at home and people who can't? When there's people who have access to take off a Saturday and go and spend a whole day in the lo'i and people who have to work a third job? When there's people who have somewhere where they can go and have their learning needs met in person to learn Ulele Hawaii, and people who only have a book and can't like process a new language that way. And I think like part of what I am learning is that being Hawaiian, it's such a relational thing. Like, and when we are separated from our land, we're also separated from all the people who knew who we were, all the people who knew our families, all the people who knew what we did and what we were good at and what we could contribute to our ahupua'a. And so like, how do we create access and like a soft place for people to come back in? And that's where it feels like that question of harmful gatekeeping can start to really be painful. Like, if you don't know me, then am I not going to be chosen? Or if I can't show up because I'm not independently wealthy enough to buy a home here, then will I not be able to participate? And I think that's part of the kuleana of like people who are doing this work to really like support Kanaka Maoli, to really feel belonging and inclusiveness.
Oh, mahalo. So many amazing points. And I think it has a lot to do with our spirituality too. These cultural practices that we call them instead of sacred traditions. It's like if you're in survival mode and you're unable to even make your bills, put food on the table, eat healthfully so that you feel healthy, then these cultural practices really do seem like practices. Then they seem like hobbies and seem like something that's voluntary versus what used to be for our kupuna, right? It wasn't voluntary. This was their daily life because they could. But because of the current structure in which we live in, Aina or off Aina, it's this commercial, commoditized, everything for profit, and eating chemicals. It makes us sick, and we have to focus on paying those bills and trying to feel better and get out of survival mode so that we can even ask these deeper questions. Am I Hawaiian enough? Am I contributing? What's my kuleana? Our kupuna used to ask, oh, who do you malama? What do you answer for? Well, we can't really even answer these questions right now because of some of us that are in survival mode. So mahalo so much, Anela, for giving so many great points. I was like nodding the whole time. So Kamakanoe, would you like to add a little bit here? I don't know if you can, but I'm just putting it out there.
Well, I'm glitching some, so I hope you all can hear me okay. I'm noticing I'm having some issues with my connection, so hopefully it sticks. No, I think what Anela shared and Kunae also is really beautiful, and they kind of took the words out of my mouth in a lot of ways. I think the piece I'm sitting with is also just the immense kuleana that it is to also receive these learnings. And so as much as it is to offer them, right, like you Kumu, who are offering these teachings and traditions, how much responsibility it is to learn them, and then to perpetuate them also. And so how do we hold that is part of the learning process, that it's not just about learning it and getting to have it, it's also how do we continue the perpetuation also and do that in a way that's pono. So I'm just sitting with that too, and I don't have the answers either, but I want our people to be able to experience our traditions. As somebody who wished I had been able to access more of it, many of us are hungry. Like, we are so hungry for these experiences, yeah, starving is a good word. And yet wanting to be respectful, but wanting to uphold this work. And it just feels really complicated. So, yeah, I think that's all that I'll add for now, but thank you for this conversation.
Oh, mahalo. I think we all relate here. And Ipo, do you want to add anything to this response?
Mahalo, yes, and I mahalo everything that these lovely manawahine shared. I think I would like to add another layer to this, which is that the reality is that sometimes, especially for generational Hawaiians, so when we use that term, we mean those who were raised exclusively away from Hawaii. There are instances where some generational diaspora Hawaiians, like, they don't know what they don't know, right? Like, especially if they weren't raised with the culture at all. And so sometimes we see situations where, and Kunae knows this as somebody who has returned to Hawaii and graduated from Hawaii. Sometimes there really are instances where Hawaiians might, the perception is that maybe they feel entitled to having some of this ike. So that's where, when we talk a little bit about protecting and gatekeeping, sometimes like that comes into play. But I think we just need to have some more grace and curiosity about what is leading them to that place. I think what I have seen, and this is through my own conversations that I have had with Hawaiians all over, that from both Hawaiians who have returned home or Hawaiians who are on the generational diaspora side, and then Hawaiians who are born and raised in Hawaii who are receiving these Hawaiians. And I've heard these situations where, especially for those who go for school, maybe they live their most of their adult life away from Hawaii, and then they get a chance to be in Hawaii. And again, if you have a Western kind of perspective or framework or lens, it is really hard to take that off. Again, they don't know what they don't know, and so sometimes that ends up in a little bit of tension. And so I want to acknowledge that that does happen. I'm not sure that I would say it happens like as often as maybe some people might presume, but there are situations. And in those situations, in the tough ones, I think that having, again, some grace and curiosity can go a long way, because most of the time, because I've also heard from those who have admitted that that was them and then they came to another side of the situation, was that it just took time, and it just took people who really sat with them to say, hey, I understand that you don't know like some of these protocols, you don't know about like the ways that we go about things here, but I'm going to hold your hand and I'm going to walk you through this. And it just took them some time to settle into it. And then later with retrospection, they admitted to, like having to come around to that. And so that's just not something that we talk enough about. And because I don't want to give the impression that it doesn't happen. It does happen. And there are reasons for that. But instead of our community kind of like dismissing the situations and writing them off as entitled or whatever it might be, again, I think it's like grace and curiosity that comes into place. Otherwise, what we end up with is a situation not unlike the situation we had on social media 6 months ago, where there was a really popular creator who was on Instagram and making some very strong comments about generational diaspora Hawaiians who very much feel like entitled to this ike and this knowledge. But it came off as, if you don't act in a certain way, you will be kind of written off. And I don't think that was the appropriate way to go about it. And I've had conversations with this creator, so I know that we are actually having a dialogue about it, so we're getting through it. But I just wanted to add kind of the other perspective in situations where there sometimes is tension, and we'll get through it. We're just kind of getting through the messy part where, it's the guts on the table thing, right? Like we just need to acknowledge that it happens, and that we're going to get through it as long as we keep having more safe discussions like these. So, mahalo.
Oh, mahalo, Iko. So this brings us to the third question, which you've already touched on now. What is one way we as Kanaka Maoli or our allies may unconsciously replicate colonial harm when we question whether someone is Hawaiian enough? And so there is some entitlement that I've also experienced by potential haumana that apply to study Lua. They feel that if they don't get it from me, they can jump around or actually, learn from two different kumu. They're not aware of the unwritten protocol between different kumu and olohe in the Lua community. How do they know? They don't know. Initially, it's a real big thorn, or as usual, having to explain that in our Maoli times, kapu meant sacred, not forbidden. And the way of kapu was through what Anela said is integrity. It wasn't the Stephen Covey checklist box that you have to do all these things. Go into the forest, grab this, make this, say this pule, go in the ocean, eat this food. It wasn't all of that. Each of these items made what we were doing kapu sacred. And that is what it is now, is expressing this to those that don't know, that you cannot just come in here, take a class, and all that information is now yours, and now you can go and post and make a video on it and monetize it. You are exposed to this. I think we're so used to, in this Western world, going, going for a workshop. Now it's all your information. Hopefully you give credit and now it's all yours. You do whatever you want. That's not how it works with our sacred information. I think once, like Ipo said, you explain it, some don't come around. Some don't go through the process and they leave. And that's okay, because they're not worthy to learn this. And that is a proper way for a kumu of any sacred tradition to make sure that, we're being proper and protecting the information. But there are those that come around. So what have you found to replicate colonial harm when you are dealing with us in the diaspora, or even when you're back home, when we're determining if someone is Hawaiian enough? Who would like to go first? I see Kunai moving. I don't know. Are you unmuting? Okay, Kunai, you did it. You could go ahead.
I moved too much. I think so. This kind of plays in with like a lot of the mana'o that I had from the previous question as well. I think a lot of the time, and kind of touching on this tension that Ipo was mentioning, I think a lot of the time, some of the times, people expect like things to be done in the traditional way, but we are not living in traditional times, right? It's like not traditional to have over half of the Hawaiian population not live here, right? It's not traditional to like not have most Hawaiians fluent in 2 or 3 or 4 languages, right? Like, so I think like I understand some of the traditional ideals, but I also think sometimes it's like it's not traditional times. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes there is just like I guess you could say things that just change with generations. And the one thing that I'm thinking of is like I went to a cultural workshop a couple months ago for a type of hana no'eau that I was very interested in. And like one thing that I had learned from my friend who is in hula and a couple other things, she's like, not everybody did every hana, right? Like you weren't the lawai'a and the kapa maker and the hula dancer and the oli specialist and you did lua and you did this. No, like you usually had, your family had one specialty. If you had enough branches, maybe they were like sister specialties, so it was synergistic. So aware of that, I still like just really like to try new things and new pieces of ike to just it like soak it up like a sponge and just cherish it. And I remember in this workshop, the kumu said, okay, traditionally, when I learned this, you were not allowed to ask questions. I will allow you to ask questions. And then by the end of the weekend, he said, Kuna'e, master of questions. Do you have any more questions for me? So, and it wasn't even pejorative. It was very like he was just kind of teasing me about it. But so I reminisce on things like that when I think of like the way that our traditions and the way that we handle our traditions have changed in modernity. Yeah, like that. And that's just where my head was going as we were talking about different traditions.
No, I love that. And it's true because our kupuna were very innovative, right? So they would be here on Zoom with us, right? We are, on our electronic platform, and they were just brilliant. And so we are them now, and we're operating and doing our best. And they evolved, right? It never stayed the same. So thank you for bringing that up. It looks like we lost Kamakanoe, so hopefully she will be back. Until then, I think Anela, would you like to speak about this?
Yeah, mahalo. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's all these different things that come up for me, and at the heart of it, I feel like the word credentialing keeps coming back and back and back. The ways that we quietly look and evaluate at each other and ourselves. Like, even though we're in this question of, am I Hawaiian enough? I can feel it in myself and in the conversations that I have with other Kanaka Maoli, where we're like, are they Hawaiian enough? Right? Like, who really is Hawaiian enough? And how do we what are the not so subtle ways that we check that in other people, right? Like, where did you grad? Where were you born? Who's your grandma? Right? Like, do you know how to olelo? Did your family keep its homestead? Right? Like, did you ever live here? You know, all these ways that we start to look at how we how we create a hierarchy of who's Hawaiian and who's not Hawaiian. And then this whole like concept of like being Kanaka Maoli and being part of local culture is another thing, right? Like if you eat the foods, or like if you know people who are like, oh, so and so said that I'm more Hawaiian than Hawaiians, and I'm more Hawaiian because I'm Hawaiian at heart, right? So these are like these ways that we reinforce. Hey, Kalamai, am I stepping in it now? Here we go. All right, let's go. So all these ways that we reinforce proximity to this like image of what Hawaiianness is supposed to be. And if you're not that, then you're something else, right? You're in that something else category. And then you don't matter, right? Like I've been struggling these last few months about like, oh, I'm kind of like a kupuna in training now, right? I got my training wheels on, but because I wasn't raised here, like what mana'o things they matter to Hawaiians. Like, what do they want to know from me? I didn't come from here. So there's like teachings that feel like I'm somehow like I should have known already. And because I didn't know, like I missed my window. And it comes out in the ways people are like, oh, how come you don't know where this is? How come you don't know where that gas station was? How come you don't know that this is the rules of where you're supposed to go with your canoe? Right? These kinds of things are like day to day. So it feels like there's like the big ways that we create harm and colonial violence against one another as products of our own experiences of being colonized people. And then they come out in these like just small everyday interactions between people who we love and care about. And then we just carry it around because we don't quite know what to do with it. Yeah, I think that's what I got.
Mahalo for that. It brings up memories of being called the quintessential Hawaiian girl. Oh, you hula, you surf, you teach lua. Oh, look at everyone looks like you. You look like everyone else. So these are some of the hurtful things that other Kanaka Maoli say to us because we're diaspora and Western educated, yet working in our cultural traditions. So our sacred tradition. So very interesting. Thank you for bringing back that reminder. But it's relevant right now. I feel safe sharing that here, how hurtful, right? Especially when it's said in your home and it's said to you, makes you want to cut all your hair. And, and that's another thing, the neck tattoos and the knuckle tattoos and being 320 pounds. Just look at the way we portray our goddesses. They were healthy and chiseled, gorgeous and feminine, embracing that loina, wahine, the feminine principle. So we need to not be ashamed of what we look like, and we can still scrap, right? I mean, even if we're healthy. So that's always important. Not that we want to, right? But Ipo, would you like to add to this?
Mahalo. I mean, they cover it so well. It really is difficult to expand on it. I think what comes up for me is so like Anela said, the everyday actions, they add up. It really is like just over time, the collection of these exchanges and questions and thoughts. And that really um when we talk about like the support group style series that we're developing with holding space, so we started with am I Hawaiian enough, because that's like a really big question, and we did that intentionally actually through quite a few meetings to really like figure out what was the right first question to ask, and we landed on this one because it's so broad enough, like we could bring in all these different experiences and kind of suss out and see like what's coming up. And what we realize now is that all these little everyday experiences are adding up to like these different kind of, if you were to categorize them, these different experiences that come out to different categories or labels. And as a result of a Western colonial lens. And so, what moving forward we are going to do is we're going to host these similar holding space conversations that are going to be dedicated to these different things. So example of that is like presentation, like that's something that came up in our group was how I look versus how I feel, that racial imposter syndrome. Like Anela touched on and you touched on, Olelo is another one. Hawaiian names is another one. Like there's so you could just like pick any one of them and they are as a direct result of the Western colonial perspective. So so there are many ways that we ourselves as Kanaka and as our allies and advocates can intentionally or unintentionally cause that harm. And obviously we know that the bottom line is history and generational trauma is why we end up inflicting that lateral hurt onto others because we are also victims of it. But I think like some of the ones that stick out to me the most, for me personally, is presentation because it's something that I have dealt with all my life. So that Western perspective of how do you look versus what I expect, and it doesn't line up. And then, of course, that can be further dissected into blood quantum, huge topic. Obviously, we're not getting into that now, but that is a huge issue and struggle in our communities. And then I would say specifically for diaspora or generational diaspora is the Western assumption that, or tokenism, I guess, that if you relate to Hawaiian ethnicity, that you are all the same. And kind of like Anela touched on earlier is like, well, if you're Hawaiian, you should know what I know, which can come down to like the very specific gas station and or where you grad. I get that all the time every time I visit home, and it's so interesting because it's not by anybody's fault, but just naturally that question will come up and I'll say like, oh well, I didn't go to high school here, and they're like, oh. And like that's kind of a new situation for them. So the assumption or kind of the tokenizing, though, I think those two are kind of like the biggest sort of Western perspectives that I think are the most harmful to what we're dealing with as those in the diaspora right now. And then, like I said, will be broken down into future segments of holding space so we can tackle them and give them the dialogue and the air that it needs. So yeah, lots to say about that, but that's just kind of my high level manal.
I love that. Thank you. This has been such an amazing 52 minutes with all of you, Mana Wahine. I want to just open the floor now for any of your final comments on this topic of, are we Hawaiian enough? What would you like to say if someone is struggling with this? Do you have a sentence or two that would really just very potently penetrate into a lot of this pain and static and interference that has been occurring in some of those that are listening right now and for a while? So Kunae, can we start with you?
Yeah. So if the question is, am I Hawaiian enough? The answer is yes. We chose the title kind of as a rhetorical question. Like it was never intent on like answering the question, well, you guys are, and you kind of are, and you're not. Like it was really just to get to the heart of like the people who need this will resonate with us, who also resonate with this, of asking ourselves this question every day. So yeah, the answer is yes.
If it's okay. Oh.
Yes, I was going to say, it's so nice to have you back.
Thank you. I was dealing with so many issues. I couldn't hear you all. It was just.
Breathe.
So yeah. Thank you all. The pieces that I'm sitting with is like nobody gets to decide that for us, right? So that doesn't come from the outside. It comes from in us. We get to decide how much of our Hawaiian heritage we connect to or don't connect to. That's up to us. Our Hawaiianness, that's up to us. Nobody gets to decide that for us. And so I think that's important to name. But I mean, also I just sit with like, it's, you know, my hila hila, right? Like it's time to not be ashamed. We need to not be ashamed anymore. For those of us who have struggled with that, I'm not speaking for all of us, but for many, and many who I've talked to, who are generational diasporans, that is something we've really struggled with, often too, because of like the impact of assimilation, and our history, right? Our history of being told for generations that we're savages, or we're you know, we're not worthy, right? We're not worthy. So many of us have been holding that in our bodies, and it's time, you know, it's time. So
Beautiful. Yeah, it's in our DNA, you know, what our
that's
mother
right.
and our kupuna, yeah, and religion, right? Exasperates that, especially as well.
Hugely,
Yes,
hugely. Yeah.
Mahu and Olive. Yeah. So wonderful. Thank you, Kamaka. Anela, would you like to go ahead and give a sentence or two? Thought?
Yeah, mahalo. Just mahalo for creating this space too and inviting us in. This feels just, it's like everything to be able to be here today. And what I would say is, like, sometimes it takes a lifetime. It didn't take a single moment or a single one of our lifetimes for colonization to happen, for us to get to the point where we can feel so alone and so disconnected or so outside. And so it's not going to take just a single moment. But what we can say is, like, each time we find each other, we're taking one more step towards reclaiming, and one more step towards like our own sovereignty, for all of us, for us as Hawaiians, to be able to connect and find belonging and find those stories and find those spaces where we can really share with one another and be witnessed. That's really what it's about. That's going to be the pathway for us all, is to find community again.
That's beautiful. I see you. I feel you. You acknowledge, you know, you exist. I'm here for you. These are things that we need to provide to others, without, of course, taking away from our own personal sovereignty, right? So we've been told in a colonial sense that we need to give everything and that we're bled dry, but that's also not the case. That's not how our kapuna operated. So thank you, Anela. And so Ipo, you want to close it out with some advice?
I I full-heartedly agree. It's a lifelong journey for some, and that means that that can enter different stages. At least for myself, I know that I am probably in my 3rd or 4th different stage of am I Hawaiian enough? I think, you know, I started off with like, am I Hawaiian enough to even call myself Hawaiian? Which seems like a silly question, right? But like that is actually those are real thoughts and questions and struggles that a lot of us have that we didn't feel comfortable enough to share. Because a lot of people like lexicon and labels, that's another discussion as well. But some people aren't even comfortable enough to call themselves Hawaiian. People with koko, they don't feel comfortable to say Hawaiian, let alone Kanaka, and there are a lot of reasons for that. So that was like one layer, and then I got past that, and you know, so on and so forth. So it absolutely, if it feels like a lifelong journey, that's okay. It's okay that it's taking the time it takes. Whatever it needs to take is right for you. Um, I think I would also add that this is not exclusive to the diaspora. And that is something that finally gave me permission to get into this space, into this work, because after silently struggling for so long, it actually took Hawaiians born and raised in Hawaii to share that I didn't know, those that I didn't know, to share their experiences of how they didn't feel Hawaiian enough for me to be like, oh, so is it okay for me to be questioning? Can I talk with other people about it? So it is, you're not alone, is the bottom line. You're absolutely not alone. And even in the I mean, everybody's situation and lived experiences are different, but even in your own specific lived experiences, there is somebody who can relate, at least on some level, and so, I promise you, I guarantee you that. And so the more that we have these dialogue and these discussions, the accessibility, the community, the more that we're able to finally come together and, you know, give each other this virtual or physical hug and say, like, I know that you're struggling with the question of are you Hawaiian enough? And like, that's okay. Maybe I am too, or maybe I'm not, but I'm here to like to embrace you through that. So so I think it's just the feeling and the sense of community and conversation and dialogue that is like the single most important healing factor of this very ongoing conversation that we should have grace and compassion for and anybody that's in it. I know there are some people in our community who think that the question of am I Hawaiian enough is laughable. And I've had that discussion with them directly. And I also understand why they have that question. And it's fair and valid in some aspects. But they'll come around to it the more that we have these discussions. So it's ongoing. It's let's just keep having these spaces where we can get into it.
Mahalo to all of you. So if you've come to this conversation hoping for a simple answer, obviously there is no simple answer. It's not I or Ole. It's not lava or not. It can be tricky, and it's so very personal to each one of us. So am I Hawaiian enough? It may not be the best question to ask, even though we've all asked it of ourselves and continually ask it of ourselves. The right questions might be, am I in right relationship with myself, the Aina, and with others? It could be, am I accountable? Am I contributing to the future of our Aina, our people, and our sacred traditions, or just extracting or even exploiting in its modern image? If we can ask these questions and operate accordingly, our people would heal the generational trauma within ourselves and our lahui. So for those listening who feel unsure, disconnected, or judged, know this: the door to responsibility is always open, but it requires humility, consistency, and action, not just performative action. And reaching out to these mana wahine here, our distinguished panelists who shared some very deep and private thoughts and directions for us. So mahalo to all of you for your honesty, your ike, your mana'o, and mahalo for staying in the conversation, because this is a really deep conversation that matters now more than ever. So like Anela said, integrity. Hawaii doesn't need to be perfect. It needs the integrity that is stored in our koko. That integrity begins and continues through each and one of us every day with each breath on the Aina and also in the diaspora. So if you ask yourself if you're Hawaiian enough, and Kunai said it, yes, you are. So ahuiho and aloha. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Oh, Kumu, I see we have a question.
We do.
Yeah, it looks like I see it in the chat, and then I think it might be highlighted right here. It says, do you folks think that these conversations are happening in Hawaii to be able to offer that understanding to our ohana in Hawaii?
I actually haven't seen any. I don't know about the rest of you, Wahine, but I haven't seen any discussions like this taking place back home. So unfortunately, I'm not sure.
I will say from my own experiences, I haven't experienced it. However, I'm not in Hawaii. I'm actually here in Coast Salish lands, in the indigenous Coast Salish lands, otherwise known as Seattle area. And I think Kunae and Anela are going to have really great perspective on this.
Mhm.
What I'm actually going to answer on the flip side, that our are we having excuse me, what are we doing to have these conversations to support and be a bridge to those in Hawaii who are experiencing the loss of people who are moving away? I think that's a really interesting topic that actually me and Kamakanoe have been chatting a little bit about is, what can we also do to acknowledge what Hawaiians in Hawaii are experiencing in relation to so many of us, more than half of us being away. So, yeah, I'll leave it to Kunae and to Anela on their side from their perspective. But I just think it's something interesting for us also to think about in the diaspora about how we are also helping our lahui over there too.
Yeah, the one thing that I liked that the person who left this question, they mentioned like offer the understanding to our ohana in Hawaii. And the topic of like what like of like ohana and what it how it changes, I guess you could say changes its function for especially like generational diaspora, right? Like what does it mean if it's your tutu but you haven't seen her in 30 years? Right, these dynamics of like how our ohana also deal with these same questions, right, of like, oh, like I Hawaiian enough if I do this or I don't do that. Then it's also kind of compounding their own identity, their own questions about themselves, when we're asking these questions sometimes. And so that can lead to some eha, um some hurt feelings, or yeah, like it's all like aloha, but sometimes like from personal experience, I did not meet my ohana until I was 27. Like ever for the first time, I met my koko, my ohana Hawaii, when I was 27. So like meeting people when you're an adult with a fully formed frontal lobe, right? like you're an adult, like past 21, past 23. It's really interesting to meet these people like later in life, and like you have an idea of like how you want to support Hawaii, or you have an idea of like how you're going to contribute to the lahui or contribute to the community, and like what type of job you want to have to exert your Hawaiianness. And then sometimes other people have very different opinions on how they've chosen to exert their Hawaiianness, and what they think is, I guess you could say, like beneficial, or justified. Yeah. So it's a really big, it's like even part of a bigger question. Yeah, because like having these conversations with individuals in Hawaii, Hawaiian born individuals in Hawaii, those with diaspora family, or those who just have diaspora friends, or people who have come home, or they've met a couple people who have been displaced. Yeah, and I think it's the goal is to try to have more of these questions. Like a little sneak peek into some of my goals for 2026 is to try to do something kind of like this, to try to create more space to have conversations like this in the Paiaina. But yeah.
Mahalo kuna e. I think I'll just add here that I feel it in whispers. As I get the privilege and the blessing to live at home now every day and really like feel what it's like to build pilina in community for the first time here. People are trying to get to know who I am, and as I work with my own hila hila and shyness of like letting people see me, the point of connection that I often will find is other parents are like, oh yeah, my hiapo lives in Arizona, or I gotta go visit my brother who's out in New York, right? So even if we here in Hawaii are here, we're one segue away from somebody who we love dearly who's not anymore. And so like what Ipo was saying, I think like that we're being touched like Hawaiians are being touched by the separation of distance, even like more than, let's say, when I was growing up, and I was like it was like a kind of, I don't know what the word is, but it was like a spectacle to see a Hawaiian who wasn't raised here. And now it's so common, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, I go over there to visit my grandbabies. And so I think those conversations, they start to come in these whispers of like, oh, but now I'm starting to understand the impact that's happening to my grandchildren who don't understand, or they don't know the customs. And those conversations feel like maybe they're happening a little bit at a time, but that's how it seems like it works with us, like grassroots, one conversation, one relationship, one family at a time.
I don't know if you got to see some of the comments that were coming up. It's beautiful. So mahalo to you listeners that placed that in the comments. Very important, and it's nice for us to know too, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so sorry. I wanted to give a shout out real quick because I see what's being highlighted is from Lealoha, who is running the Kalo Civic Club out here in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. And she's amazing. They're doing incredible things. And so if you're not already familiar, please check them out. Kahlua is like amazing. And I also wanted to share that I got a message from Kamakanoe. She's on the fritz, like her computer and her whole tech setup is just a little clunky. So she just wanted to say aloha and for having her in the space in the conversation. And regrettably, she was having tech issues.
okay. Well, it's a good place to stop tonight, and we can, of course, continue this if you, Wahine, would like to do so in the future. We can tackle another difficult question. So it's been my honor to be with all of you this evening. Mahalo very much. And there we go. Sis Dana's back.
Aloha, everyone. Once again, we would like to give a big mahalo to our panelists for starting this conversation because it is definitely needed. Of course, as Kumu was saying, this is just the tip of the iceberg of this conversation. And of course, Moana Nui Podcast, we're looking at trying to make this into a series. So we're going to have ongoing conversations about different topics that affect the Hawaiian diaspora, but also us feeling are we Hawaiian enough in different aspects? Because offline, we're talking about names, learning the language. A lot of us were did not get the privilege of learning. Of course, going to school at in Hawaii for high school, it's like a very big thing. If you didn't go to school there, it's kind of so it's so many layers. We would love to dive further into and continue having these conversations with our panelists and other panelists who are interested in joining this conversation. So once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. As you see on the banner at the bottom, please continue. If you are part of Diaspora here and you want to learn more and definitely be part of the conversations outside of this live podcast episode, definitely go to Hawaiian Diaspora's website and also go to their social media. You can find them on social media and both Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So whichever is your form of social media, definitely connect with them and find out about upcoming opportunities to connect with other Kanaka that is here in the diaspora, but and of some of the conversations they are having with their organization. For those that are interested in following any of you on social media to stay connected, can you provide them what social media handles or where they can find you?
Yeah. I am on Instagram and TikTok as Third Culture Kanaka. All one word spelled out. Yeah. My thoughts are much less organized and much more sporadic over there, but that's how I like my social media presence.
Anyone else want to share any of their social media handles or their business or organizations you would like for people to connect with?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Anela Barboza, or my coaching Instagram handle is Ulele_coaching. And I put it in the thing so you can see it over there. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
You already said it, Dana, at Hawaiian Diaspora, and I would just like to tail end that we in 2026 are planning to have much more frequent support style groups. So the first one, if anybody had been following, it was a much lengthier process that Kunahe had mentioned, but it is planned to be much more frequent and like less of a process. So please keep an eye out because like I said, we are going to get into the weeds into like all those segmented topics. So hopefully there will be a space for everybody more often to be able to connect with others.
Amazing. And Kumu.
Oh, no. all these beautiful wahine. Yeah, this is the work they're doing, so they deserve to be followed and supported. So, which I'm going to do for every single one of you once we're done here.
Yes, love it, love it. So everyone, once again, for those that are on the live, thank you for tuning in. And if you're watching this on the recording, definitely share this information for other Kanaka that are needing this conversation. And definitely, if there are topics that you're interested in Moana Nui covering, please definitely share it with us. You can email us at moananuipodcast@gmail.com. That's moananuipodcast@gmail.com for any topics of interest, especially around the I Hawaiian area. And then that way we can see about getting that scheduled in as future episodes. So everyone, once again, thank you so much for tuning in for the Moana Nui podcast and to all of our wonderful panelists for this amazing conversation. And you all have a great evening and a great holiday week coming up. So everyone, have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Mahalo, mahalo, Kumu.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will. If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then. When they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah. Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will. So if we put Hawaii in a perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom, clapped back at the system. Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. Network out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.